or we won't. Hey, Norman, not getting warned this time. Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. On this episode, Ron Story Jr. You know, that's a fun name to stay. I don't know what it is, but Ron Story Jr. is joining us, man. Ron, good to have you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All the way from 5,000 miles away down in South America. It's good to feel like I'm back at home speaking English with somebody.
I was just going to say, and you just gave us a cool picture tour of Medellin and what life it looks like, for this small town boy that I am, thinking about, man, those are some big buildings down there. Ron, man, my first thought when I was looking at who you are and what you've been doing, I see it that you were a people. No, I flipped it. I got my mind backwards. You were a dollar number guy, and then you became a people guy. How did that happen, man? What was the transition that caused that?
Well, actually, let's go back a little further with the numbers. I originally went to school for engineering.
Oh.
Right? So I originally went to school for civil engineering back in college in the late 90s. And because of my poor mathematical skills when it came to, high level math, I figured, well, I can count, so I'll just do business, right? So I don't need to do calculus to do accounting. You just need to know how to add and subtract. So I started my first business when I failed out of engineering school in 1997. That's how it happened, man.
Well, I'm laughing because right here, same thing. My dad's a rocket engineer, rocket scientist. I mean, PhD and everything, right? So what do I think I'm going to be? Same thing. I made it through my freshman year, first semester of my sophomore year. I was like, I called Dad up, said, I'm going to the recruiter. He talked me off the ledge of that, and we found a degree that that higher level math I didn't have to do. So we'll just leave it at that. So you and I same thought process.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's a common thing. A lot of times, I think it's kind of crazy that they entrust a couple $100,000 into the hands of an 18-year-old and tell them to go into debt to decide what happens with the rest of their life. But if I wanted to buy a house, they wouldn't give me the money to buy a house, right? So, I think it's kind of criminal to put these kids in debt to go to college and not know what they want to do, or to get a degree that they may not end up using. So I was fortunate that in 1999, the Illinois State University started an entrepreneurship program. So I was able to actually get a degree in entrepreneurship, where prior to that, you could only get like accounting or business administration or marketing or something like that. But they had learned about what was happening out in California at Stanford and different colleges like that were doing entrepreneurship. And they decided to pilot that. So I was one of the guinea pigs that got one of the first degrees in entrepreneurship in the state of Illinois.
Is that what got your entrepreneurial bug going, or were you like a lemonade stand kid growing up? Where did the entrepreneurial bug come from?
That's interesting. I wasn't a lemonade stand, because you don't want to be selling lemonade on the corner in East St. Louis, Illinois. That's going to be pretty bad.
That's the first time we got that answer.
You ain't selling lemonade. They're going to think you're selling.
There's that business sense.
Yeah. Back in the 80s, it was young guys standing on the corner, but they weren't selling lemonade. They were selling rock cocaine. And, but I wasn't, my mom and dad were school teachers. And, in the summers, we had the summers off, so I was a bit more fortunate. So what happened, my mom would say, well, just go collect cans, right? So everybody drank soda, and there were recycleries. So I had trash cans full of cans that were sorted by either the aluminum cans or the tin cans that I could take in and recycle. So that was the first real business that I ran, which was begging all of my friends' dads for their cans, and not telling my friends that's what we were doing, because then they would be competition. They wouldn't give me their dad's cans if they knew that I was taking them to turn them in. But that's what we would do. I would take cans. I tried shoveling snow Nah, I wasn't good at that. So I just pretty much like stuck to doing cans most of my, that's how I got shoes and stuff like that, outside of having to beg my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the first business that kicked you off, man? And what was the follow on? I'll just throw it out there now. What was the biggest lesson from that very first,
Oh yeah. I'll tell you.
You got the fancy college degree in entrepreneurship. Yeah. So you were an expert, right?
Oh, 100%. Right. So here's the thing. When I failed out, I was like, you know what? I think I can start a business. And in little small college towns, there's no Six Flags or Great America or Disney World. There's just, it's a little bitty town and you're just kind of trying to find stuff to do. So I had this idea that you could put miniature golf and go-kart tracks in these little towns, right? So we called it the Promised Land Family Entertainment Centers, right? So I wrote this business plan and all of this stuff, and I went to probably every bank in Central Illinois, and they were like, dude, why don't you stop coming here? Because we're not giving you the money. You don't have any experience. You don't have any money. You got a good business plan, but ain't nobody giving you this money, bro. And this one guy, he really just sat me down and had that conversation with me. And he said, but you know what? You write really good business plans. I have people that come in that qualify for the loans, but they have terrible business plans. Why don't we send them to you and you write business plans for them, right? So this is in 1997. And at the time, the personal computer had just, like, if you had a computer, you were like top of the line. And I had just got my first Hewlett-Packard computer. And I had the little AOL disk and everything, right?
Yeah.
And there was a program called Business Plan Pro that I bought for $79 at like Office Max. And you put this program on the computer that had pre-written templates. And the guy at the bank said, hey, we have a guy that's charging $80 an hour to write business plans. Everybody complains about the price. We'll still recommend him, but if you do it for like $40, we think more people will do it with you. So I paid $79 for some software where it had like 100 templates of different types of businesses. He would send me the people. I would load up the template, customize it a little bit, send it back out, send them an invoice for $700 for the, 15, 20 hours of work that I put into it, supposedly. And that was the first real business that I had.
I'm laughing over here because I had a similar short stint, but a similar type of business where I had to do that same thing where I was like, oh, I can knock this out in a couple hours. But I was like, oh, and actually, Dad, you told me it. You were like, no, don't charge how fast you can do it. Charge how long it should take, not how fast you can knock it out. Like that's the bonus of you being good at your job.
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of times the value that you provide is more important than the time that was spent. Right. So if we think of athletes, right? Athletes get paid. They all play the same number of minutes. The basketball games aren't longer for LeBron James than what they are for the guy that's sitting on the bench. It's still a 48-minute game, right? But LeBron gets paid more. Boxing matches, they're not 5-minute rounds for Floyd Mayweather. He still has to fight 3 minutes, just like the other guy on the other side that's getting paid a tenth of the money he's making. Right. So the value that you bring to the table is probably one of the most important things to realize as an entrepreneur. I guess a great example of this would be if you had a broken leg, right? Or if you had to get some type of surgery, would you want the doctor that could do it the fastest or the doctor that could do it the best, right? And you can take more time if you want, as long as it's going to be done right. I'm not going to die. I don't want you to do it faster. It can be faster and cheaper. No, I'm good. I think
fastest surgeon this side of the Mississippi. No thanks.
Yeah, you don't want that, So he can put a hole in your head faster than anybody, right?
Man, so then it was the brain providing the value, huh? Was that the lesson? When you started
that's what I learned. I learned that really quickly. And to kind of continue with that, as I went on to become a financial advisor while I was in school. because I had taken the money from writing those business plans and I was invested them in mutual funds. And one of my friends, he was like, man, you're really good at this. You ever thought about becoming an advisor? I'm like, oh, I got to wait till I graduate. He was like, you can do this while you're in school. It don't require a degree to sell investments and to be a financial advisor. I'm like, get out of here. He's like, no, you can do this. Like, you can just go get a license. Just go get your insurance and investments license. You just have to be 18. Okay, so I did that. And I started selling investments and insurance for Northwestern Mutual while I was a junior in college. Yeah. So I learned the value of things then too, because some guys would sell an insurance policy, take the same 2 hours to meet with the person and make $300. Another guy would sell an insurance policy, take the same 2 hours and make $15,000. And I asked him, I said, well, what's the difference? He said, hey, man, it takes the same amount of time to write a $100 a month check as it does to write a $1,000 a month check. And I said, holy crap, it ain't about the time spent. It's just one extra zero on that check, Yeah.
I learned that lesson when I was doing business development. I did right after I retired from the Army, I did business development for government contracting. And you learn that really quick that, that $100,000 contract to reply with a proposal took just as long as a $100 million one. So What are you going to spend your time doing? So much truth to that, man.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so I think that's a big thing. I think it's one of the biggest lessons from someone that I've never had a job, right? So I've always been on my own. So if you've come from an hourly work environment, and when I say I never had a job, of course, as a kid, I had like $4 an hour minimum wage jobs working at McDonald's and crap like that. But I'm talking about as an adult on an hourly schedule, you have to be here at this time. I've never had that, but I find that that's one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs that are coming from that world, I make $50 an hour. I charge $200 an hour. And I'm like, yeah, but you could have sold this for $8,000, instead of the outcome is worth more. And, I think that the internet has opened that up as we see courses and different training systems coming out nowadays where a person can teach their information once, but sell it 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. And, in the past, you would have to, before YouTube and all this video online stuff, you had to teach each client over and over and over and over and over. When I was a financial advisor, I had to meet with everybody. If I had to get back in that business today, I wouldn't meet with anybody. I'll be doing like 50 people on a Zoom call like this, giving them the first speech all together. I wouldn't be doing one-on-one meetings.
Did you have trouble as an entrepreneur without that hourly mindset? And I guess what I mean by that is, when you were working, was there any sort of conscious issue? Because it's something I've ran into before, and I think a lot of people do who have the more flexible type jobs, where it's like, oh crap, I didn't work 40 this week, or like that type of and you feel like you need to work the hours for something, but then you're also the intelligent one in the back is thinking, hey, I finished the project. That's what actually matters. Did you ever struggle with that type in the early days?
So I had a great guy by the name of Phil Sarnicki, who was the owner of the office where I was a financial advisor. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time where I had like a mentor when I was trying to do all these other things, open up these, the family entertainment centers and all of that stuff. Nobody was mentoring me. Right. So Phil said, Ron, let me tell you something. The great thing about being an entrepreneur is that you get to work half days. Right. The hardest part about that is deciding which 12 hours you want to work. Right. And that was one of the first speeches he ever gave me. So I realized right from the beginning, you got to work like a slave to live like a king. Right. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, you're working all the time to try to build a machine so that the machine can pay you a dividend on the time invested. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So
I love that analogy, man. It's been a while since I've heard it, but that's one of my favorites. So yeah,
exactly. Right. Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, all you do is do this. And then all of a sudden you're the boss. The boss of who? Right. Until you have a gang of employees and you can go on vacation and the business, when you come back, the business is better than what it was when you left. You really own a job. right? So as a financial advisor, I didn't own a business. I owned a job. I was self-employed, which meant I worked a lot of hours at no pay in order to get a payoff on the back end. But I couldn't predict when that payoff was going to come, right? So I would meet with a lot of people and not make sales. But then I make one sale and it makes up for the time that I put in with the other 5 people, right? So I think as a self-employed person, your biggest goal, if someone's listening to this and they're self-employed now, your biggest goal is to start replacing the low dollar things that you're doing with people that you can pay to do that. And I made a mistake. I can tell you a huge mistake I made doing that cost me a lot of money, right? But you want to replace those low value tasks so that you can start replacing yourself. And then you have more time to start training people on the high value tasks, such as closing or lead generation and things of that sort. But you got to get rid of the low value stuff. You should only be focusing on the things that help you to make money. But I made that mistake, and it was, I wanted to.
You got to tell us, man. I mean, this is twice. You've crossed the threshold. You tossed it out there, man. So go ahead, tell us the story. Right, tell us what happened.
So here's what happened, right?
I feel the pain.
I was with Northwestern Mutual, right? And I realized I was self-employed. So I said, well, you know what? Maybe I should go and try to do something where I could have a business. So I eventually moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I had 8 Allstate agencies, right? So I was over the financial services in these 8 Allstate agencies. So now I got employees. I got people selling car insurance, and then they're just giving me the referrals to sell the life insurance and the investments. So now we got 8 locations. I'm running a business, right? I wanted to have more, and Allstate told me no. So I talked to someone at Farmers Insurance, and you'll understand what I mean. I talked to someone at Farmers Insurance, and they said, hey, why don't you come and run Illinois and Iowa, right? We'll make you the manager over 300 offices for Illinois and Iowa. And since you've been doing your own thing, you never have to come to the office. Just run it like it's your own business from your house. You're going to live in Illinois. Our office is in Michigan. You'll never see us. Just run these 300 offices, right? So I really don't call that a job because I was still running that business for them, right? Well, here's what I did. Here's the mistake. Ready? Da-da, right?
Drum roll, please.
As I'm working with these 300 farmers agencies, I realized, wait a minute, they don't have a way to sell financial services on a regular, like a consistent basis. So if I could develop a system that they could use, I could leave farmers and then I could roll this out nationwide, right? Now, I had already created something similar in my office in Allstate. So I already knew, how to do it for myself, but what other people adopted. Well, I made the stupid bonehead decision of leaving farmers to go do this on my own, in which I could have paid someone $15 an hour to recruit agents, right? To recruit the agents without farmers even knowing that I was doing that, right? That's low-level work. I gave up a $120,000 a year job to do a $15 an hour job of recruiting agents, right? But that's just, I didn't know, right? Yeah. So someone else would have said, Ron, you're not even spending the money you're making. Take some of that, invest it over here, build up this business, right? Because here's the key. Self-employment is when you have to do something, right? Owning the business is when the machine can work on its own when you're not there. So if you go into a McDonald's, you don't see the franchisor in there, the franchisee in there shaking the fries and putting Big Mac sauce on the hamburgers, because he's hired $15 an hour people or 15-year-old boys and girls from high school to do that for him, right? That's what I should have been doing. I should have outsourced one level of things and another level. And then when it was generating enough profit to replace what I was making at Farmers, I could have gone over and become the CEO there, right? I didn't know. Nobody ever told me that. All of my entrepreneurial stuff I learned from University of HK. which is hard knocks out here, just getting my ass kicked. You know,
as you were telling that story, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, here's a dude that all his business lessons were learned by running into the brick wall and going, dang, that hurt.
but you learn that they stay with you forever. But I would rather have those lessons than not have them.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
You know, I used to always tell people, they say, man, I learned this at 40, and one of my mentors, who's a really great guy named David Price, he said, Ron, it's better that you learned it at 40 than at 50. Right. I wish I would have learned it at 30, but it's better at 40 than at 50. Right. And that's kind of how I look at it. I'm glad that I went through those experiences, because those are the things that develop your character, and, it makes you who you are as an entrepreneur. So it's hard for someone to kind of pull the wool over my eyes, because I've been out here doing it. I'm not an Instagram entrepreneur. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, I learned this because I learned a trick off of Instagram. Nah, I've been out here just getting my butt kicked, but I've had some wins too,
Yeah, well, I think, sorry, I was just going to say on that, I think, as the entrepreneur trying to learn those lessons, as much as you want to look back and say, oh, I wish I had done this, wish you'd do those things differently, I think there's a really important perspective switch. This is coming from full honesty of what happened to me with one of my first business ventures. Of if I had gone and been successful with that, I might have made a bunch of money, for that, first opportunities. If I had run and done that in Colorado, ooh, gosh, that could have been some money. Then I would have done the next business venture, and I probably would have gotten screwed over the exact same way I did, except it would have hurt so much more because it happened further down the road. That happened before I even started the freaking business. And so it was okay. I was unharmed from that. And if that happens 10 years down the road, that pain is going to be so much worse. So it's good. It's, good to have those issues come up earlier than later. Definitely.
Well, yeah. I mean, the lessons are going to be learned. Right. Mm-hmm. And, there's an old saying that says, the lesson's either going to be caught or taught. Right. And what I mean by that is either you're going to catch it by watching it or experiencing it, or you're going to have a mentor that's going to teach you about it so that you can avoid it. Right. So it's either going to be caught or taught, but it's going to come. Right. And, sometimes we catch it, but sometimes we have mentors and people that have already been down the road that can help us to divert and get around that without saying, oh, okay, yeah, I'm being stupid. I trust that you know this. And you have a huge advantage with your dad. My dad was a school teacher. He did nothing, when it came to entrepreneurship. I had nobody to bounce it off. So I'm just out here, just banging my head against the wall, because the only entrepreneurs I knew were drug dealers that were chopping up crack cocaine on their living room table. And I would watch them. Like, these are the people that I knew, right? But, there's no way I was going to get out there and sell drugs. I just didn't have the heart to do it.
I got to ask on that. Sorry, Dad, one more on this, because I'm very curious, because I've heard a bunch of entrepreneurs with similar type of stories who might have spent some time. I'm trying to think who it was. Someone I was reading recently who spent some time, dealing weed for a while and that kind of stuff. And he talked about, like, it's where he learned the hustle that made him the great entrepreneur. So what lessons did you learn from those guys cutting up crack on the table?
Oh, I mean,
because there's got to be something.
No, the lesson is you work, right? I mean, just work. Like, dude, like you want to get out, you get out. If you want to get out of the hood, you get out of the hood, right? Mm-hmm. And the way you do it is you work your way out, right? So I would, see people working, not kind of working. And what I mean by working, I'm talking about standing outside all hours of the night, right? Like, you drive down the street, you see them outside at 2 a.m. And I know we're going to be in, this is a guy that has been doing this since we were in high school. Right. And now, looking back, I'm like, he's out here at 3 a.m. He was out there at 3 a.m. when we were in high school, and I didn't know it. Do you see what I mean? And still making it to class in the mornings. Right. So, I mean, you learn that, nothing is given to you. Right. And things can be taken away from you. That's another side of it. That's another part of just growing up in the inner city. You learn that there's a give and take to everything. And with the family entertainment center thing that we were trying to do, a guy by the name of Clint Atkins, His name is on the Atkins Tennis Center at the University of Illinois. I actually presented him the business plan to try to get him as an investor. And he taught me a great lesson about NDAs and how they don't mean anything. Because he was like, I signed the NDA, but sue me. He's like, you're not going to win. And him and his family, they put up they took the business plan and actually built out the things that I was working on. I have no hard feelings against Clint, right? But I learned a huge lesson. Just protect yourself, protect your ideas. At the time, I found out now that I'm older, I really wasn't doing the business. I wasn't showing it to Clint, even though you want the investment, you're really looking for approval as a kid, right? As you're kind of looking for someone to say you're good enough, right? The investor becomes,
I feel attacked.
I'm good enough. What'd you say, Kim?
I said I feel attacked because that hit me to some of my early conversations with investors. And yeah,
but that's it. We're kind of looking for.
I hadn't thought of that though, but that's.
I'm good enough,
Yeah.
So even though now at 40, 43, I can look back and say, you know what, I was kind of looking for approval as this insecure kid from East St. Louis, going to an all-white college, failing out, been told I wasn't good enough by the college. Can somebody just tell me I'm good at this business thing, right? I'm looking for someone to validate that I was smart enough, right? And Phil Sarnecki did that when I was at Northwestern Mutual. When I was there and I was selling investments, he gave me the kind of the big brother talk of, dude, just go. Don't worry about it. Your results speak for themselves. You don't need approval from the outside because you can just look at your checking account. You can look at the deals that you've closed. You're good enough to do this, right? So, that led me being in the insurance business up until 2012, and even to this day, I still own an agency. We're about 100 agency. That stupid thing I told you I shouldn't have done, there's still about 100 agents that sell insurance under our company that I still get residual checks from, right? But still one of the stupidest decisions I ever made. I don't care how much they pay me. It was dumb. it was
well, bad. I'm guessing that you have a scalability lesson tossed in there too with this. What's the success or even the shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. Picture in business, whatever business.
So right now I run a company that I recently bought, right? And the reason why I talk about it from the perspective of me buying the company is because one of the first things in scalability is the ability to purchase. That's one of the superpowers of being able to scale a company, is to buy one that's already running, which means I'd never have to go in it, right? I can look at the books, I can talk with the management, I can do things like that, but I'm not actively running the business. So if you want to be instantly scalable, just buy something and leave the management in place, right? So that's the first part of scalability. That's the first lesson that I would give anyone. Don't start from scratch. You can buy, when you buy a business, you're buying the previous owner's work, right? When you start a business, you're investing in hoping that your current work today will pay off in the future, right? So I just don't have that much time anymore, right? If I think realistically, I probably have about 20 years of hard work left. Do I want to spend another 10 building something? Or can I go and buy 20 years of somebody's work that is tired and they're looking to retire? I can give them a peaceful retirement, but then I don't have to go and spend that 20 years trying to learn the same lessons. So, that's probably the main lesson in scalability I would give anybody who's listening to this. Buy, don't build. Then build.
What's your people measuring technique, if you will? Because if you're buying a business, you gotta know and evaluate, right? How do you do that?
Yeah. So the first thing you look at is the numbers, right? You want to understand the numbers of the business, right? But then I think you have to talk to the management. It all comes down to character and ethics, right? If you're talking to someone with bad character and they're like, yeah, I know that the tax numbers say this, but we kind of do this. All right, dude, you're going to lie to me about a bunch of other shit too. So if you're lying to the IRS, you're lying to me. I know because I can't penalize you like Uncle Sam can. I have no jail to put you in. All I can do is call my lawyer and argue with you. So if you're lying to Uncle Sam, already I know you're lying to me, right? That's my own personal feelings. Well, people say, well, what about sellers' discretionary earnings and all of this? You can hide different things. Dude, tell me the truth. It's BS. I want to hear it. Yeah. Right? I want to hear all the crap. So I look at character, like what's the character of the business? If someone is talking about their customers as if they get over on their customers, that's a whole nother other character flaw. So when I'm looking at any business to even considering investing in or buying, it's listening to the people talk, because that's who you're going to be in business with, right? You're going to be in business with that employee or those employees. And I've learned the hard way from that. I've had to sue people because of them reneging on something that they promised in a transaction. So if I had to simplify it, into a talking point, it would be look at the character of the people, listen to what they're saying. And if they're talking about how they're being slick with other people, yeah, you're next. You're going to be next.
I think it's so fascinating, Ron, because one of the things that we've talked about before on the show is, the difference between like a CEO and an entrepreneur. Now, some people are cut out for that startup phase, and then they are terrible at the management phase. And then there's other people who could manage the hell out of a business and get it to grow once it's already built. But it's like, gosh, they can never build one. And that's always kind of been the buckets that I put into. And frankly, I thought you would kind of fall into that second bucket of like, hey, in the school of hard knocks, it was like, ooh, maybe the entrepreneur thing isn't as good. So you made the shift. But what I love is you made that shift, the ownership side to the purchasing side, but as an entrepreneur, if that makes sense. Like, it was still very much an entrepreneurial decision of, okay, how do I do this the best? How do I grow? It wasn't I don't want to do the startup thing. Like, I'm not the best at that. Let me just buy to make it easier. It was calculated that like, this is the best move forward. So I just wanted to give you the praise on that, because that's the two buckets I've thought of, as far as personality types for that. And you are the entrepreneur who made that shift, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of that was learned when I was at Allstate, right? Because Allstate is a place where you can have multiple locations. You remember I said I was trying to get more, and they told me no, right? So Allstate and Farmers Insurance, you can buy more offices, right? So you don't just have to have one location. You can go and buy out other people and own the entire city if you want, of all the Farmers and Allstate offices that are out there. So I learned that from them about, this is just a franchise, right? This is just a business system, and it's just an insurance franchise. They have everything outlined. The guy whose name's on the door, he ain't even working in there. It's a $15 an hour lady most of the time. Most insurance agency offices are women that are just want a steady secretarial job, and they just help people with car insurance. And that's not an insult to them. That's just, they are very good at it, right? The guys have too big of egos, and they want to be the boss. That's why you don't see a lot of guys working in administrative roles in insurance or financial services, because they eventually want to be the guy running it, right? But most women, they're like, oh, no, I'll just do this. This is great. Y'all pay me great. I get to kind of do my own thing. You don't bother me. They're just happy that they can be the queen of their own castle, if that makes sense. But I learned that at Allstate, that, you want the system to run. Get out of the way, let the system run. Right. And so when I think about buying businesses, I use the framework that I learned at Allstate and at Farmers about how the business should be running without the agent, right? In order to determine if a business is sustainable and if it can run without me before I would think about buying it.
As you made that transition, to take the way I put it earlier, of, from entrepreneur to CEO and kind of that bigger picture, was there another one of those, hard knock situations where something went wrong and you learned that big lesson? Did you kind of learn it as you went? Or was there not much for learning curve there? Was it, kind of a natural ability, I guess? What do you think?
So as someone I think most intelligent people have pride of authorship. We want pride of authorship. I built this. This is mine. I did this, right? I'm a golfer. I'm a bowler. I love to play chess. I'm used to being in individual sports, right? So it's all about me, right? And the hardest thing for me to learn was that in business, it doesn't have to be about me, right? So I can take the pride of authorship out right? And let someone else take the credit. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
And let me share with you what I mean by that. So, a lot of times we take pride, and I built this from scratch, as if raising funding or raising investment money to buy a business is kind of cheating, right? Or buying someone else's business. Yeah, I bought this one and it's profitable, but I'm going to change it. No, it's profitable. Don't change it. But we want to go and put our own fingerprints on it to kind of add that we did it. We're not just, if I bought a business from Cam, it's like, oh, well, this was Cam's insurance. So I need to go in and we're going to do it this way to let people know that this is Ron's insurance. No, Cam's insurance is making money. Leave it alone. And leave the name on there too. Don't even change it. Like at one point, I think like 75% of all funeral homes in the United States was owned by one company out of Canada. They never changed the names. They never changed the people who were running it, and nobody knew. Right? Nobody knew. That was incredible. Why? Because funeral homes, they need the local name. We've been in the community for 85 years or whatever, right? And people are going to that funeral home because of the local reputation, and my family, they took care of our other family members, blah, blah, blah. But if they would have known it was a company, a big conglomeration out of Canada owning the damn thing, they probably wouldn't have wanted to use it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the pride of ownership thing is the biggest lesson that I learned. It's like, get pride of authorship, I should say. Don't go in wanting to put your fingerprints on it for the sake of saying that you did it. Does that make sense? Or
yes, sir. And, it reminds me a lot of actually going back to some of my development economics classes and for ag biz. So, agriculture is a big piece of development economics. But one of the things they talked about a lot when you're looking to go into other countries and build up these programs, in addition to the strategies of how to do it effectively, sustainable economics, one of the biggest things they talked about is like that you can't come in there as the American. You can't come in there trying to do it the American way. And we went through all of these different case studies of businesses, McDonald's trying to go to insert country here that they couldn't get into because they tried to do the exact same thing they were doing and they couldn't make that adjustment. Yeah. The other one that comes to mind, and this funnier one, because they actually pulled out of this because they're still super popular. But I remember, Dad, it must have been 15 years ago or so, Nike bought Bauer. And they tried to rebrand all of the hockey equipment to Nike, and nobody bought Bauer because it was becoming Nike. And then I think it was a couple of years later, right, Dad, they realized that lesson and rebranded everything back to Bauer. And now they're still like a staple inside the hockey community. Same thing, type of thing as the funeral home.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs can learn from that, not the pride of, I want to do it on my own, or I need to change the name, or any of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, y'all want to wrap it up? Or I don't know what to do. Seems like there's an emergency, like, there's lights flashing in the background. Well, sirens are going off.
There was. And my wife's Miss Suzanne's trying to figure out if it really is for us.
Okay, all right. Sorry for interrupting the show with it, but it was kind of an awkward moment.
It's genuine,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it says evacuation order for fire near an intersection that I don't know the roads. So Miss Suzanne's looking it up, and yeah. Okay. But here's what I do want to know. What would be if the Ron HKU? We're going to start HKU. What's that one thing? Because you've got little Ron, the imaginary little Ron is coming in. He thinks he knows it all. What's the one thing that you want to just shove down his throat and make sure if he gets one thing out of being at HKU, that's the one thing. What is that lesson?
Ask for what you want. Whether that's the price, the service, the product, ask for what you want. Don't ever be afraid to ask for what you want, because on the other side, there's somebody wanting it also. There's somebody wanting the opportunity. So if you want to buy a business, ask if they want to sell. There's somebody looking to sell one. If you want to hire someone, you want someone to work for you, ask enough people. There's somebody that's willing to work for you. If you want a certain price, maybe this person can't afford to pay it, but you should still ask for that price because somebody out there sees the value in what you bring to the table. The person that you're talking to may not see the $5,000 worth of value that you're talking about, but someone else may see what you're talking about. Like, dude, I'm going to make 30 grand off of this. Heck yeah, I'll give you 5 for it. Right. So just ask for what you want. Everything you want in life is on the other side of no. Right. If you hear enough no's, eventually you just figure it out. So in the financial services world, we have a basic equation, which is $ equals 1/n. And that $ is the money you make is equal to 1 over the number of phone calls you need to make. Right. So I make money for every sale I get after 400 phone calls. Right. So once you've solved that equation, you just basically say, all right, I need to make X number of dollars. So I probably need to make 1,000 phone calls this month. So you just make the 1,000 phone calls. You don't even focus on the selling. You just focus on the activity because you know, based on your last 8 months of how many sales calls you make, how many deals you close, this is how many it takes. So now you just do the numbers and the numbers work. Like the law of large numbers are real. So that's really the one thing I would tell people is just ask for what you want and ask enough times. So it would be those two things. Ask for what you want and ask enough times because most people, from a sales point of view, my main company now is called 5 Contacts, right? And it's an appointment setting company. And the reason why it's called 5 Contacts is really simple. 91% of salespeople make one sale attempt. They'll make one contact with the potential customer. But 80% of sales, 82% of sales are made after the 5th contact, right? So we call the company 5 Contacts because we think you should keep following up with people until they tell you to stop, not until you get tired. And now with all the automation, you can do this all automatedly. You can send emails to people every 5 days for the rest of their life until they unsubscribe, right? Mm-hmm. So, ask for what you want and ask until you get it. It's pretty much those two things. Ask enough.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. That's kind of my rules of life.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so simple. And, it just reminds me of, we put in our head thinking that person's probably going to say no before we even ask, which is, So if you ask for it, you never know. Right. Yeah.
I'll tell you one quick story really quickly. So I have a client she writes children's books. Right. Mm-hmm. And she's a really nice lady. She's a lawyer. She's the opposite of every lawyer that I've ever met. She's really humble, really soft-spoken, and she has a law degree, but she works for a company. So she's not out there like bashing people over the head. Right. But she writes children's books. And she says, Ron, can you help me to get my book in the bookstores? So we're reaching out to bookstores for her to try to get her book placed. And somebody wrote her back an email saying, it's unprofessional to reach out to people to their personal email accounts. I prefer you use this email account at my job instead of my personal one. Now, she heard none of the positives in the email. The guy asked her for books. He bought books from her. All she heard was, he said I shouldn't reach out to him on his personal email account. I said, but if you didn't, he wouldn't have bought these books from you.
Yep.
Right. So she was like, I want to stop the campaign. I think I'm offending people. I said, show me 5 emails of somebody replying back to you saying that you're despicable for reaching out to them. She says, nobody's ever said that. I said, well, why is this one guy? You've gotten 45 appointments from us with bookstores. You're going to stop that because of this one dude that actually bought something from you, said something. Right? It's all emotional. If she just keeps playing the numbers, get over it. You'll be fine. So just ask for what you want and don't be deterred by somebody, the advice of a stranger. I don't care what strangers have to say. I'm going to keep doing it my way until I figure it out because look, I'm not supposed to be where I'm at. If you'd have told the people I grew up with that 30 years from now, Ron would be living in Medellin, you know, not in the hood, not selling drugs, not doing something crazy, not dead. I buried 60 some of my friends that I graduated high school with. You know, I'm only 43. I shouldn't have had to go to 60 some funerals, right? So, you know, I've already won. That's kind of my mentality. So it's like, dude, what are you going to do? What you going to do? Send me back home? Like, you don't have the power to do that. What are you going to do? Tell me no? Get out of here. What are you going to do? Make me learn to sell weed? Get out of here, dude. I ain't like paying no attention to you. So I don't listen to the detractors.
I love it. I love it. And man, this has been great, Ron. And man, lessons are just filling up the book again. So here's my favorite one. Going to be caught or taught. That's what life's lessons are.
That's it. They're going to be caught or taught, you know?
Right. I love that, man. That's a good one to put in the pocket. Write it down, put it on that dollar bill and shove it in your wallet, because that's what's going to happen. Camden, how about you? What'd you
For me, it was, Ron, what you were saying about the pride of authorship and how dangerous that could be. I think, you know, as a young entrepreneur, that's something that definitely hit home with me, because one of my jobs growing up was landscaping, you know, doing general contractor or working for a general contractor, doing all kinds of stuff. And my favorite thing about it was being able to look at it and go, look what we did afterwards. And that is definitely how I feel about entrepreneurship. And I think I got a little bit of work to do in here on that to try to fight that pride, because I see the downside. You painted a great picture of it. Now I just got to do a little bit of work.
Well, think about it. As you get more employees, they're going to be doing a lot of the work. Right. And here's what I've learned as a manager of a lot of people. The owner can never take credit. Right. The only way you keep your employees happy is by giving them credit for the work that they did. So as you build a bigger organization, you're going to learn to just defer credit down to them anyway. Right. And I'm going to tell you the best examples of this. And, you know, I don't think anybody will get offended. Husbands do this very well with their wives. Right. As a boyfriend, I've given more credit to my girlfriends for stuff that they never deserve credit for, just because I knew it would make them feel happy and it was a pat on the back, right? So it may have been a minor thing, but I made a big deal out of it so that they felt better as my partner, right? In the business, your employees are going to want credit. They need that self-esteem to know that they're doing a good job and that they're not just a cog in the wheel, right? So they want to know. So you learn to just give all the credit away to other people. And then you just take all the arrows, right? So you say, yeah, that was my fault. Yeah, I did that. That was the worst thing ever. But you're so smart. Thanks for pointing that out to me. You know, so how do you suggest we fix it? And then you let them fix it, right? Yeah, it was my fault for you not knowing. I should have told you better. How do you suggest we fix it going forward now that you've learned that? Right. So I think that there's accountability, but at the same time, as the owner, you have to learn to give away all of the wins. Give the wins to the people that deserve it, because you get all the money. Give away the credit and get the money. Right. Cash is better than credit. That's what we used to say. I don't want the credit. I want the money.
That's great.
Ron, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Well, I learned a lot about I probably talk too much. So I got to learn to get my story small.
Okay, chalk that one up.
You know, I gotta make my stories a little shorter so these podcast interviews go better. But yeah, that's the first lesson I learned today in real time. You know,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I've got to let that one soak in for a minute. while that's soaking in, man, tell us how people can find you, hook up with you, you know, learn some more Ron HKU lessons, right?
Well, so I'll give them a couple opportunities. Number one, they can find me on any platform at ronstoryjr.com, right? I mean, Ron Story Jr. You can go to .com, but just Ron Story Jr. on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. It's just my name, RONSTORYJR, right? But if you're listening to this podcast and you would like to be a guest on podcast, you can go to pitchdb.com and sign up, and I'll help you to get booked on podcast for free. Cost you nothing. You can be guest on podcasts just like this, you know, and that'll be great, you know. they'll put a link down at the bottom where you can hop on a podcast and get your message out there. You can come on a podcast and talk too much too, you know?
That's right. Hey man, I appreciate, we loved your time, man. We really appreciate you joining us and sharing some life lessons. Good to chat with you, Ron.
What's that smoke behind you, Otis? Is your house on fire?
Yeah, geez, I hope. Yeah. Oh man.
No, this is great. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Ron Story Jr., for joining us today's episode. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. And make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Instagram and Facebook. And please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Videos of the podcast are on our YouTube page, and you can always get a full archive of our episodes at thecamandotashow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.